I was lying on the kitchen floor, barely breathing, my cheek pressed against the cold tile. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, and the world pulsed in and out of focus. I could hear his heavy footsteps fading into the living room. A door slammed. Then silence. For a few seconds, I wasn't sure if I was still alive. Every inch of my body ached, but the worst pain was the thought that I'd let it come to this. I'd promised myself after the first time that I would leave if it ever happened again. But I hadn't. I'd stayed. I'd believed his tears, his apologies, his promises. I turned my head slightly. Through the crack in the kitchen door, I saw my daughter, Katie, 3 years old, standing there in her pink pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide with terror. That look, pure, frozen horror, broke something inside me that could never be repaired. That was the moment I knew. I couldn't stay another day. Not for him. Not for the marriage. Not even for the idea of family. I had to run. When the house fell quiet, I waited. Minutes passed, maybe hours, I couldn't tell. The clock above the stove ticked, slow and cruel. My breathing steadied just enough to push myself up. My reflection in the dark oven glass looked like a stranger. Split lip, swollen cheek, eyes so tired they didn't even cry anymore. I stumbled into the bedroom, careful not to wake him. His snores echoed softly, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just tried to kill the last bit of me. I packed in silence. Diapers, a bottle, Katie's favorite blanket, my wallet, her birth certificate. I didn't take any clothes for myself, only for her. My hands trembled so hard I dropped the car keys twice. Katie whimpered when I lifted her from the crib. "Shh, baby, it's okay," I whispered, though I didn't believe it. We crept down the hall, past his mother's old photos on the wall, past the life I had tried to build out of broken promises. I didn't even lock the door when I left. I didn't care anymore. The night air hit me like a shock, cold, damp, freeing. I strapped Katie into the car seat with shaking hands and sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel. I didn't know where to go. I had no family nearby, no savings, no job. But I knew I couldn't stay. The bruises on my arms throbbed with every heartbeat. My body was screaming, but inside me something new had awoken. Not fear, but a desperate kind of strength. I turned the key. The engine started. Headlights sliced through the darkness. I drove without a plan, without a map, without a destination. Just away. Away from him. Away from the smell of whiskey and control. At some point, I pulled into a motel parking lot, one of those places that looks like it's seen too many broken people. The sign buzzed weakly. Rooms available. I sat there for a long time, the car still running, watching the rain streak down the windshield. Katie was asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling. I felt a strange mix of terror and peace. I didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but at least we'd see tomorrow. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who met Matt when he came to buy a house. He was confident, polite, easy to talk to. We had lunch after the signing, then coffee, then dinner. Everything with him felt safe. Predictable. Maybe that's what I needed back then, safety. Or at least the illusion of it. His mother loved me instantly. She called me her daughter before we were even engaged. She'd say things like, "He finally found someone who won't hurt him." I didn't understand what she meant until years later. He had been married once before. He never said much about it, just that she was ungrateful and ran off. I believed him. I thought he was a good man who'd been wronged. When my company closed, I was devastated, but he smiled and said, "Take some time off. You've been working too hard." It sounded caring. But that's how it always starts, not with chains but with comfort. He said he wanted a baby, and I agreed. Maybe I just wanted to make him happy. Maybe I was afraid of losing him. I didn't realize that was the moment I lost myself. The first time he hit me, Katie was 3 months old. He came home from a friend's house, half drunk. I was holding the baby, trying to calm her. He shouted something about dinner being late. I told him I'd already eaten. That's when he slapped me. Hard. Katie screamed. He froze, his face twisting from rage to guilt. Then he started crying real tears. He swore it would never happen again. He brought flowers the next day. Said he was stressed, that I'd pushed him too far. I forgave him. I wanted to believe it was a one-time mistake. But it wasn't. It never is. Each time, it took less to make him angry. A misplaced mug. A smile he didn't like. A wrong word. Every apology came with new rules. Don't go out. Don't see friends. Don't work. He didn't need locks or threats. He used guilt, silence, and fear. His mother knew. I saw it in her eyes. She never said a word. Maybe she thought she was protecting him. Or maybe she was just tired of trying. Now, sitting in that motel parking lot, I finally understood. He didn't just break me. He isolated me so that leaving would feel impossible. But here I was broken, bleeding, terrified, and still leaving anyway. I turned off the car. The engine went quiet. The only sound was the rain. I laid my head on the steering wheel and whispered, "We're free now, baby." Katie stirred in her sleep. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry, not from pain but from relief. That night, I didn't sleep. I just watched her. Her tiny hand curled around the edge of her blanket. I knew life wouldn't be easy from here, but at least it would be ours. Tomorrow, I would call the one person who might still pick up. Tomorrow, I would start over. It was almost 3 in the morning when I finally reached for my phone. My hands were still trembling, the screen blurry through tears. I scrolled through contacts I hadn't looked at in years, people I'd slowly pushed away because he didn't like them. Then I saw her name, Laura. My best friend once. My sister in everything but blood. The last time we spoke was before my wedding. She told me, "You don't look happy, are you sure about him?" I'd brushed her off. And after that, Matt made sure I never saw her again. Now, years later, my finger hovered over her name. I almost didn't call. Shame burned through me. Shame for staying, for letting him destroy everything, for proving her right. But I pressed call anyway. The phone rang once. Twice. Then her sleepy voice. "Hello." The moment I heard it, the dam broke. I couldn't speak. Only sobs came out. Quiet at first, then louder, until I was gasping for air. "Who is this?" she asked, worried now. It's me," I managed to whisper. "It's Anna." Her tone changed instantly, sharp, awake. "Where are you?" I gave her the name of the motel and the room number. She didn't ask what happened. She just said, "Stay there. I'm coming." It felt like no time had passed before headlights flashed outside the window. A car door slammed. I opened the door and there she was, standing in the rain, hair messy, face bare, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. She looked at me, at the bruises, the cut on my lip, the baby asleep on the bed, and her eyes filled with tears. "Oh my God," she whispered, pulling me into her arms. I cried so hard I couldn't stand. She held me up, whispering, "You're safe now. You did the right thing." We didn't talk that night. She tucked Katie under a blanket, helped me wash my face, made me drink water, and sat beside me until I finally closed my eyes. In the morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through dirty curtains. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then I saw Laura sitting at the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone, and it all came back. She smiled softly. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" I tried to answer, but my throat tightened. "I don't know," I said finally. She nodded. "That's okay. You don't have to know yet." She'd brought food, coffee, toast, a small toy for Katie. I hadn't eaten properly in days. Watching Katie hold that plastic toy duck and giggle, I realized it was the first time I'd seen her smile without fear. Laura insisted I come home with her. She lived in a small apartment downtown, cozy, warm, full of life. She didn't have much, but she gave me everything she could. The couch, clean clothes, quiet understanding. At first, I couldn't stop apologizing. "I'm sorry for waking you. For showing up like this. She stopped me every time. "You don't owe me an apology for surviving." I didn't realize how powerful those words were until much later. The first few nights were hard. Every noise made me flinch. I woke up drenched in sweat, dreaming of footsteps, shouting, breaking glass. I'd grab Katie and hold her until dawn. Laura would make tea and sit with me, saying nothing. Just presence, simple, patient presence, became the thing that slowly glued me back together. Days turned into weeks. Laura found a way to get me connected with her cousin, who managed a small daycare and offered to take Katie for a few hours a day. That gave me time to start looking for work. But I had no recent experience, no confidence, and no idea where to begin. Every time I sat down to fill out an application, I froze. What if he finds me? What if he wins custody? What if I can't do this alone? Fear lived in my chest like a second heartbeat. Then one morning, as I sat staring at a blank resume, Laura said, "Anna, you were a real estate agent once, right?" I nodded. "Then you're going to be one again." Her certainty startled me. But that night, I updated my old license records online, shaking the dust off the version of myself I thought was gone forever. Meanwhile, Matt started calling. First from his number, then from unknown ones. I didn't answer, but the voicemails poured in. At first, he begged, "Please, Anna,
come home.
We can fix this." Then he blamed. "You made me do this. You know how you get." Then he threatened, "You'll regret this. You can't take my child away." Each message felt like poison seeping through the cracks of my new life. Laura helped me record them all and gave me the number of a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases. The lawyer's voice was calm, professional. "You did the right thing by leaving," she said. "And yes, you can protect your daughter. But we'll need evidence." So I gathered everything: hospital records, photos, messages, the broken phone he'd once smashed in anger. Every piece of pain became a piece of proof. One afternoon, I got a letter, a court summons. He was suing for custody. My heart sank. For a moment, all the strength I'd built began to crumble. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the paper, while Katie played with her toys on the floor. She looked up at me and smiled, the pure, innocent smile of a child who had no idea how close she'd come to growing up in a home of fear. I promised myself right then, I will never let her go back there. That night, I stood by her crib and whispered, "You'll never see him raise his hand again. Not to me. Not to you." I didn't sleep, but I wasn't afraid anymore. Because for the first time, I wasn't running, I was fighting. The first court date was on a rainy Tuesday morning. I remember standing outside the courthouse holding an umbrella that shook almost as hard as my hands. Katie was too young to understand, so Laura came with me. She squeezed my shoulder and said, "You're not alone. Not this time." When Matt walked in, my breath caught. He looked the same, pressed suit, clean-shaven, calm. He smiled when he saw me, that same polite, practiced smile that had fooled everyone, including me. The only difference was his eyes. They were cold, empty, proud. His lawyer spoke first, painting him as a hard-working husband desperate to reunite his family. They used words like unstable, hysterical, vindictive, all aimed at me. I sat there, shaking, clutching the edges of my chair, trying not to cry. When my turn came, I felt small, voiceless. But then I looked at the photo of Katie on my phone, her tiny hand covered in paint from daycare, her messy curls, her fearless little smile. And suddenly, my voice found me. "I left because I had to keep my daughter alive," I said. "Not just physically. Emotionally. Mentally. Because growing up watching your mother being hurt is another kind of death." The courtroom went silent. Even the judge paused. Over the following weeks, I gathered everything I could: medical reports, police notes, screenshots of texts, photos I'd been too ashamed to show anyone before. My lawyer helped me turn chaos into evidence.
It was exhausting.
I relived every bruise, every insult, every moment of fear. Some nights, I cried in the shower so Katie wouldn't hear me. Other nights, I sat by her bed, watching her sleep, reminding myself why I had to keep going. Matt's mother testified on his behalf. She said I was too emotional, that her son just needed support. I wanted to scream, support doesn't mean bleeding for him. But I stayed silent. Let the truth speak for itself. There were days I wanted to give up. Every time I stepped into that courtroom, I felt naked, my entire life dissected and judged. They asked why I stayed so long, why I didn't leave sooner, why there weren't police reports for every beating. How do you explain fear to people who've never lived inside it? How do you describe loving the same person you're terrified of? But then, I'd walk out and see Laura waiting on the steps, holding coffee, smiling like she believed in me more than I did. And I kept going. One evening, after another long day in court, I found Katie sitting on the floor, trying to button her doll's dress. "Mommy, are you sad?" she asked. I smiled through tears. "A little, baby." She thought for a second, then said, "It's okay. You can use my happy." Her words hit harder than any verdict ever could. I realized that everything I was fighting for, safety, peace, dignity, wasn't just mine. It was hers too. The day of the final hearing came quietly. No more witnesses, no more speeches, just the decision. The judge read slowly, carefully. Primary custody to the mother. I didn't cry right away. My body went numb. I just sat there, staring ahead, hearing the words echo in my head like a prayer. When I finally turned to Laura, she was already crying. "You did it," she whispered. But I shook my head. We did. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sun broke through the clouds, weak but bright, the kind of light that makes everything look new. Matt didn't say anything after the verdict. He just looked at me, that same smile, now twisted with anger. For a moment, fear flickered in my chest again. Then I looked at Katie holding Laura's hand, laughing about something small and innocent, and I knew he couldn't touch us anymore. He disappeared after that. No calls, no letters. Sometimes I still caught myself glancing at shadows, half expecting him to show up. Trauma doesn't vanish when the judge signs a paper. It lingers, testing your peace. Rebuilding wasn't easy. I got a job at a small real estate office. The pay was modest, but the first time I earned my own money again, I cried in the car on the way home. I bought Katie her favorite pink shoes, the same ones he once said were a waste of money. That day, they felt like a crown. The apartment Laura helped me find was small, one bedroom, thin walls, creaky floors. But it was ours. We could laugh as loud as we wanted, sleep without fear, decorate the walls with childish drawings. Freedom has a sound, and its laughter echoing through safety. Still, healing wasn't a straight line. There were nights I woke up from nightmares, convinced I heard his voice. Days when guilt whispered, maybe he changed. But then I'd remember that moment, Katie's eyes through the crack in the door, wide and terrified, and I knew I could never go back. Sometimes, I'd find myself touching the faint scar on my lip, not out of pain, but as a reminder. This is what survival looks like. Not pretty, not perfect, but alive. One evening, Laura came over with pizza and wine. Katie was asleep, the apartment finally quiet. She looked at me and said, "You know, I've never seen you this peaceful before." I smiled. Peace feels strange when you've lived in fear for so long. She nodded. "You earned it." We sat there in silence, the kind that feels like healing. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future, not one built on survival, but on living. I didn't know if I'd ever trust another man again. Maybe one day. Maybe not. But I knew one thing for sure. My daughter would grow up knowing what love isn't. And that's a victory no court can measure. 3 years have passed since that night, the night I left everything behind. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still see the flicker of the kitchen light, the broken mug on the floor, the terrified face of my little girl. But the memory no longer crushes me. It simply reminds me where I came from and what I survived. Katie is 6 now. She runs, laughs, sings too loud, and fills every corner of our tiny apartment with noise and joy. She has my eyes and his stubborn chin, but her heart is all her own. Gentle, fearless,
Free.
Our mornings are chaos in the best way, mismatched socks, burnt toast, endless questions about everything. On the way to school, she always reaches for my hand. She doesn't know that sometimes I hold on a little tighter than I should. Maybe part of me still needs proof that we really made it out. Life is simple now. I go to work at the agency, help families find homes, real homes, safe ones. Each time I hand over a key, I think about how much those walls will mean to someone. Maybe that's why I love my job so much. I know what it means to feel safe after years of walking on eggshells. I've built something small but steady, savings, a routine, a life that feels like mine. Some days are still heavy. Triggers come out of nowhere, a raised voice, a slammed door, the smell of whiskey. But I've learned to breathe through it, to remind myself it's over. He's not here. You're safe. Healing isn't a straight road. It's a spiral. You come back to the same pain, but each time it hurts a little less. I used to think I'd never trust anyone again. That love was something meant for other people, softer, luckier ones. But then, slowly, life introduced me to kindness again. A man came into the agency a few months ago, widowed, looking for a house for him and his teenage daughter. His name was Daniel. We talked about mortgages, neighborhoods, sunlight. He had gentle eyes and a quiet way of listening that I hadn't seen in years. When he smiled, I flinched. Not because of him, because part of me still waits for good things to turn bad. But he never pushed, never rushed. After closing the deal, he thanked me and said, "You make people feel at home, you know that?" That night I cried. Not from sadness, from recognition. Because somewhere deep inside, I realized I'd done exactly that. I'd built a home, not just for Katie, but for myself. Every now and then I think about Matt. Not with hate, not anymore. Hate kept me tied to him long after I'd escaped. Now, I think of him the way you think of a storm that passed, terrifying, destructive, but gone. I sometimes wonder if he ever changed. But then I remember how many times he swore he would. I used to cling to those promises like they were life rafts. Now I know some people don't want to change. They just want you to stay. His mother called once, about a year after the divorce. Her voice was frail. She asked if we were okay. I said yes. She cried quietly. I think, in her own way, she was sorry, not just for what he did, but for pretending not to see it. We never spoke again. Katie doesn't remember much from those years. Just fragments. The house with the red kitchen. The nights when Mommy cried. She asks sometimes where her father is. I tell her the truth gently. He wasn't well, and I had to keep you safe. She nods, accepts it, and goes back to drawing. One day, she'll ask more. When she does, I'll tell her everything, not to scare her, but to show her what strength looks like. I want her to know that love doesn't hurt. That control isn't care. That anyone who makes you smaller isn't worth the space they take in your life. And maybe, one day, she'll grow up and never repeat my mistakes. Or maybe she'll make her own. But she'll know how to walk away when something breaks her spirit. Sometimes, I visit the park where Laura and I used to sit with coffee during those court days. She still lives nearby. We don't talk about the past much anymore. We've replaced it with laughter, new stories, small celebrations. Last week, she looked at me and said, "You're different now." Softer. She's right. I used to think survival meant being strong all the time. But now I know it means being gentle with yourself after the war is over. It means letting joy back in, even when you don't trust it at first. Tonight, as I tuck Katie into bed, she asks, "Mommy, are you happy?" I pause. The question is simple, but it fills my chest with emotion. "Yes," I say finally. "I think I am." She smiles, presses her tiny hand to my cheek, and whispers, "Then me too." After she falls asleep, I sit by the window, watching the city lights. The night air is cool, the same kind of quiet I once feared. Now it feels like peace. I take a deep breath and whisper to the woman I used to be, the one lying on that kitchen floor, covered in bruises, thinking she'd lost everything. You didn't lose. You just hadn't started winning yet. And for the first time in years, I believe it.